Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife and how to live a more vibrant second half. Today, I have an inspirational conversation for you. I am talking to a woman who believes that everyone needs a Lucille in their life. She's sharing her inspirational story of a vibrant centenarian, her best friend, Lucille. Today is my guest, Judy Gaman. She's the CEO of Executive Medicine of Texas and the author of Love, Life, and Lucille. Judy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It is such a pleasure to be on with you, and just everything you're doing is so exciting, and to be part of it, it's my honor to be here with you.
Thank you so much. This year, I really wanted to find people who had an inspirational, kind of an aging, pro-aging, inspirational story to share, because I talk to people about midlife all the time, all the aspects of midlife. But I thought, wouldn't it be great to just find people that have these powerful stories that remind us of how aging can be an adventure and a joy, right? And so you sent me the book, Love, Life, and Lucille, and it had the most adorable picture of you and Lucille in it. I loved it. It's my bookmark for the book. And I've been enjoying reading it so much. And I'm excited to talk to you and find out, because I've been reading the book, I have a side of the story. I would love to have you share with my audience, how is it that you came to write this book? Because you are a CEO of Executive Medicine. So how did this authorship and this writing and this desire to write about aging come about for you? How did that happen?
Well, it's actually a fun and exciting story. I've authored 7 books. That's my 6th book. And I was working on a book called Age to Perfection, How to Thrive to 100, Happy, Healthy, and Wise. And as part of my role at Executive Medicine of Texas, I work with the doctors there, and we put out several health and wellness books. But this particular one, I was working on it and interviewing centenarians, people over 100. And originally I was just doing the research, honestly, and studying the gray zones, and some of the research has been out there, and how do you live long? And then I had this, I guess you call it epiphany. Why don't I just ask the people that lived over 100, how'd they do it? And so I asked my writing assistant, can you go and, find me people over 100? They can't be drooling all over themselves. They got to be able to be coherent. And I really thought this was going to be a very hard task. And I was shocked to find out how easy it was for her to find people. In a week, she had a handful of people for me to start with. And one of them was Lucille-Fleming. And she said, getting on this woman's social calendar was incredibly hard, because she's got more things to do than I do. This is my writing assistant saying this. And that interview started out an incredible friendship. And when we talk about aging, and I know that's something that you're passionate about as well, as aging well, and how do we live healthy, and how do we get more out of life? And Lucille was just the poster child for longevity. She died just shy of her 104th birthday, so we had 4 years together. And 4 years were just filled with incredible wisdom and fun, hardship, and everything you can imagine about life. I got to experience with her during those 4 years. And in a time where we really have lost perspective, as a country, as the human race, it doesn't take a genius to realize that we lost perspective. You can just go on social media and see what's important to people, and how we've all in some way, shape, or form become a little bit of a narcissist. How many likes do they get today? And we've lost the true meaning of friendship. What is a friend? I kind of say Facebook did that for us. It changed the true meaning of friendship. But spending time with someone and having a true friendship, it's life changing, it's life altering, and learning how to be a good friend as well.
Yes. And how unlikely is it to meet someone at 100 and then have 4 years together? What an incredible gift.
Yeah. And I really realized, even though she's so vibrant, she was playing duplicate bridge and she was on the residence council and she dressed to the nines and she was just full of life. I recognized that every day was a gift. It is, yes, tomorrow's not guaranteed for any of us, but when you're over 100, that's even more true. And it was just so incredible to watch her really appreciate living. I give some examples, and I talk about this in the book, but she always laid her clothes out the night before, fully expecting she would get up and put them on. And she bought green bananas. And there were just things that she did that kind of maybe in some psychological way told herself, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I've got more life to live. And, just signing up for, like I mentioned, duplicate bridge. Okay, I'm on I play bridge with these people. She has something to do on certain days of the week. I think is so important. And it was just one of the many lessons that I learned from her. And one of the many things that I also learned, that as she was aging, if there was always something to look forward to, it really kind of changed not just my life, but it changed her life too, if there was something coming up on the horizon.
Now tell me a little bit about what you learned about aging. What were some of those nuggets that you gained and gleaned from your time with Lucille?
Well, I grew up as a third generation workaholic. I wore my 60 hours a week like a badge of honor. It was, if I wasn't working, I was being lazy. And one thing that she really taught me early on was, hey, you got to take care of yourself. If you're tired, you got to take a nap. If you're, if you feel exhausted, you are exhausted. Listen to your body. And these are things that we all say. Even at executive medicine, patients flying from all over the globe, we give them advice all the time, but it's a matter of how often do we take our own advice? We're burning the candle at both ends and we're telling people, oh, you need to relax. But her take her own advice and how it had changed her life and how it had helped her live so long and so healthy, and just enjoy every second of life. It was an inspiration, I think, for me to pay attention to those things, to say, we weren't meant to work 60 hours a week, and it's okay not to. Giving ourselves permission to enjoy things. She had this really great knack of meeting people and instantly being able to talk to them. So as we were going through, and you may have picked up on this in the book, as we were going out, we were doing things. We'd go to particular restaurants or we'd be out and about. We'd always meet the most fascinating people. And I was like, I'm always around fascinating people. I was just too busy to start up these conversations and realize how fascinating people are and how great life is if you just stop long enough to pay attention and to appreciate it and to, love on other people and let other people love on you a little bit and notice the flowers blooming. And, instead of just walking straight to your car while looking at your phone and driving to the office and getting out, and you get up and you sit at your desk and you're like, oh, I don't even remember driving here. We're all kind of in that automatic mode. And I say all, I'd say the majority of us are in that automatic mode. And when I say everyone needs a Lucille in their life, she had so much wisdom and her life sped up. She went on a book tour with me for Age to Perfection. She got a whole new title. She reinvented herself as a longevity expert. And she played the role, trust me. I mean, she loved the camera. So it was so much fun and to do that and meet people and just enjoy every day and make every day an adventure.
Mm-hmm. It's so incredible, isn't it, that we are in such a season of life now in midlife that I feel like it's one of the busiest seasons of my life. Like I thought having young children was busy, but somehow this midlife is a whole nother level. There's so much going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm 50 and I got to tell you, between my kids, my grandkids, and my parents, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. Mm-hmm. You want to help everywhere you can help. Still, obviously, live your own life and handle and tackle your own challenges. But it's a unique time in life, this middle age. You have a little more wisdom, and I have a lot more, thanks to Lucille, who, had shared her 100 years of wisdom with me. But I think if she had not come into my life, and I've even had people read the book, who've written letters to me and talked about this incredible change that, happened in their own lives because of the stories and because of the premise of the book. If she had not come into my life, I think I would have been down a different path. I don't think I would be enjoying life this much. Yeah, I mean, she takes that whole don't sweat the small stuff to a whole nother level. She passed away before we had the last 6 years of political issues. But she said to me something interesting once. She said, I born the year the Titanic sank. I moved to the United States with a locket and a suitcase in the middle of the Depression. I put myself through school when it wasn't really kosher for women to go to school and actually graduate. They were going for MRS degrees. And she said, and I lived through wars and people who don't like this politician or that politician, and it say that. And she says, and you know what? It all works out in the end. We all get happy again before we're unhappy again. So just having that reassurance that every generation goes through this. And there are certain things that are the human experience that cross all boundaries. We all have our first love. We all have been afraid of something. We've all failed. We've all succeeded. It's the human experience, and being able to enjoy the human experience for what it is, I think, is one of the biggest gifts she gave me.
That's such an incredible thought, isn't it? That we get so myopic where we are at in life, and we forget so much of history and the ebbs and flows of the good and the difficult, right? That it is not always good. That's impossible. But it is also not always difficult and bad and hard, and you get someone, my daughter and I were talking about, I said to my girls, imagine this woman, what she lived through. We were sitting at the table going, okay, cars were kind of a new thing. There was no television. There was some radio, all of technology, people walking on the moon, there's so many things that happened in her lifetime. When she was born, they did not exist.
She was in a horse and buggy, and they were potato farmers in Prince Edward Island, Canada. And it was just such a different time. And she went through all of that. And she was a nurse, so she got to see all the medical advancements. And, we kind of forget that penicillin wasn't always around, that there are things that we have now that can cure us that we didn't have in the past. I mentioned that she came to the United States with a locket around her neck and a suitcase. Well, the locket actually was given to her by her best friend, her child best friend's mother, when her child best friend died of consumption. And so, there's a lot of fast growing up that these older people have done. They learned really early on, but they were never victims. And we tend to, as a society, we either take a hyper responsibility or we fall into the victim mode. And the older people who have lived through so much, there was no time to be a victim. There was, they had to kind of mourn and move on, or they had to deal with it or find unique ways to alleviate stress. I mean, they didn't have gyms back then. Now we're like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and work out my stress. Well, of course, they had to, they had other chores. They had chores that were very labor intensive. So they didn't need a gym. They were at the gym all day long, working and whatever it was they were doing. So it wasn't like, I want to say it's kind of like stepping back in time, spending time with her, but it really wasn't like that. She was very modern. She was she dressed to the nines. Just to paint a picture for your audience, she always had a ribbon around her neck and a flower on her lapel. And she had the best clothes. Just the best clothes. And she still wore heels over 100. So, you kind of have to think about paint the picture. She had incredible wigs. There's a chapter in the book called Wiggin', where we went to the wig store together. And it's just interesting to watch someone who's full of life, who didn't say, I'm just going to give up. They just every day fully expected that it was going to be another great day. Even when things weren't great. She broke her leg. And when she was, I think she was like 98. And she said, the worst thing I ever did was let them take my driver's license. I thought, well, you can sell my car. I don't need it because, I broke my leg and I'm going to have to go through all this therapy. She says, but man, they told me it would take months for me to recover. No, not Lucille. She was coaching the other people in physical therapy. In 3 weeks, she was all recovered and walking around normal. And she said, I was so mad I let them sell my car. And she just had so much life in her.
That's so incredible. It's amazing. It's amazing how much an attitude can impact a life, isn't it?
100%. When she was in that rehab, she told me this story. It's so funny. She said, I walked over and I said to this guy who was, moaning and groaning and she said, I walked over there and said, you better make up your mind right now. If you're going to get better, you better stop groaning and moaning. You better put in the work. She just told him like it was. And she said, and you need to do it with a smile on your face. And she said, and the next day he put a smile on his face and he'd be bragging to her how many reps he was able to do. And she said, life is kind of mindset, just like you were mentioning. It's about attitude. It's about doing your best no matter what it is, whether it's repetitions in physical therapy or whether it's, your job or your family or your health or whatever, but just saying, yeah, I'm going to have the right attitude. I'm not going to be a victim and I'm going to take full and utter responsibility for myself. And that was something I got to tell you, when I was interviewing the that was something that was in common with all of them. They all were very much in charge of themselves and in charge of their health. And, there were other really interesting things that I don't know if I should say I wasn't expecting, but I was happily surprised, is they all had faith. They all believed in a higher power. They weren't all the same religion, but they all believed in a higher power. And they all attributed during the interviews their longevity, their love of life, their joy to their faith and their ability to maintain their faith through all the things they had been through. And they all had been through unique situations. And then the physically active part was hands down important to all of them. One lady, I just love this lady. She was, I think she was 101 when I interviewed her, but she still went to the gym every day and she would do the machines, but she wouldn't put the weight on them. She goes, I don't do the weight anymore. She goes, for me, it's the range of motion. But she'd do her, whatever it was, 20 reps on each machine. And then, but that was her routine every day. And I have no doubt that's what kept her going and kept her healthy.
It's interesting, the attitude that we have about aging in general as a culture. We do have the benefit of this pro-aging movement. And because of social media, we see vibrant people and we have people who are bringing them forward and saying, this is what aging can be and is if you want it to be. Because I think there is kind of this attitude like, oh, I'm 50, I'm old. It's like people talking about being old at 50. I'm like,
Yeah.
you
No.
literally could live another 40 or 50 years. You might be old in your head, but there's so much more life to live. And I think that's what was so attractive about this book and the vibrancy of Lucille. It's such an enjoyable read because she's the kind of woman who reminds you that, this life is such a gift.
Yes.
You had
Yes,
such
it is.
incredible
It's a gift.
stories. Yeah.
It wasn't all reflection for her too. It was, I said, is there anything that you want to do you haven't ever done? She goes, well, she loved the Rangers. She says, I really like to throw out the first pitch at the Rangers game. And there was this wonderful lady named Karen that happened to know somebody at the Rangers game, someone in the Rangers
organization somewhere.
Yeah. And she said, oh, well, let's see if we can make that happen. So Karen and I kind of chatted back and forth. And sure enough, Lucille at 102 threw out that first pitch. And she made like the highlight reel. So every time the Ranger highlight reel came on TV, she's like, that's me. I mean, she was like so excited. My good friend Doreen, who I talk about in the book, had since moved back to Australia. And she was like blown away. She's like, in her Australian accent, I just saw Lucille, on our TV. She was on TNZ, it was like, she just loved life and people ate that up. When we were doing interviews, we do television. They just say, well, we're going to have you back. Like, let's come back. Let's do another show. What do you want to do? And there was this wonderful morning show called The Broadcast. And they said, well, they had her on when she was on the interviews for the Age to Perfection book. She came on with me and they had her on for that. Then they had her on for another interview. And then they were so sweet. They said, hey, do you think when she turns 102 that we can do her birthday on television? And I was like, oh yeah. So she had kind of this tea with the girlfriends and then we drove up to the station and she got to go on television and she was in this really great outfit and this floppy hat. And she just was, oh my gosh, just eating the whole thing up. And they made a cake for her. And I mean, she just loved it. And I think people loved her because she was interested in them. And it wasn't all about her. I say she loved it, but she would go in and she'd have these incredible conversations with, the lighting guy or the camera guy, it was just incredible. And it reminded me to smile at other people and to have conversations, to find commonality. She could find a commonality with anybody. And if she really, really liked them, we had this code. She would say, oh, Judy, don't you think they can be in our club? So, I go, oh yeah. And then she'd say, she'll get you a t-shirt. You're in the club. And we didn't have t-shirts. She would just say this. And it could be, a nurse she met, or it could be some waiter or whatever. But, yeah, if she really, really, really liked somebody, that was her cue to tell me this person's special.
Oh, that's so fun. Now, you guys had weekly dates, right?
We did. Every Friday we would go out to dinner, or out to lunch rather. And we'd go to the greatest places. And she'd come back and she became kind of a celebrity at the place where she was at, because, she'd be on TV and all these older people would, gather around the television and they're all like, oh, we know her. And, so she became a little bit of a celebrity. But we would go out to eat and I'd pick these places and, she would try sushi. She tried sushi. She never had it before in her life. I write, there's a chapter about that. It was hysterical. We'd have these outings and there was a funny thing. I didn't write, well, this got edited out if I did write about it, but there's a place in Dallas called The Mansion and they have a great restaurant. And she told everybody at the place where she was living, I'm going to The Mansion today with Judy. And it became like a thing. So she said, I'm going to save half of my food because I want to take it back in a mansion bag. And it was just funny because this is so not like, when I tell these stories, she wasn't stuck up. So the fact that she would say things like this would just be hysterical. So I'm gonna take it back in a mansion bag. So she told the waiter, I'll just get this here to go. And the waiter's like, okay, no problem. They bring her this bag and she turns the bag around. It's a plain white bag. She turns it around and around and she's like, there's no name on the bag. It was so funny that she just was like, although at defeated the purpose, I could have eaten my meal. It was just funny that she, and I tell this story and she'd have these moments of being kind of out of character, but where she loved playing the part so much. She loved that she had something to talk about back, something to share, that even something as simple as having a bag that has the mansion's name on it was going to be the conversation at dinner, because she was thinking, well, I'll take the bag and just say, oh, I'm having my leftovers from the mansion or something. And that would start these incredible conversations with the people at the table. So yeah, she just loved life. I mean, I'm talking to you and I'm smiling because anytime I talk about Lucille, it makes me smile. And people that have read the book say they will randomly smile because they're thinking about some funny thing in the book, or some funny story, and they'll just smile thinking about it because the stories stay with you. She just had that kind of effect.
It must have been an incredible experience to be with someone who was so vibrant. When you are a person, like you said, that's a workaholic and you're literally that hamster on the wheel. Mm-hmm. And yet you had to make time to be with her. In the book, you share that you were trying to come up with reasons at first to see her again.
Yeah, that is funny. So, because it started as an interview and I just was like, oh, I really got to go see her. So I said, hey, I've got a few more questions. Can I pop by? And she's like, oh, yeah. Now I realized, like, I was so excited about going. I put it on my calendar and I get there and I realized I didn't have any questions. I hadn't prepared anything. I don't even have a piece of paper to write on. Like, how am I going to like fake this? So I go in and she caught on really quick and she just kind of reached out and patted my hand and said, Judy, you don't need a reason to come visit me. Let's just hang out. And I was like, yes, it was such a great thing to have somebody go, you don't need, just come on by. Just, hey, we'll hang out. And, every Friday, like clockwork, we were together. And then, towards the end, and I'm sure if you haven't already gotten that far in the book, you will get that far. There was a point where she came to live with me. And, when I was with Lucille, I just wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't thinking about my to-do list. I wasn't thinking about anything about stress. I was just living in the moment.
There's a lesson, living in the moment and allowing life to give you the gifts that are in it. Because don't we miss so much in our busyness, like you said, children, if you have grandchildren, which you do, aging parents, a job. Before you know it, you're just busy thinking about the next month of your life. Yeah,
that's so true. And just panning out, how do I make it through? I found myself, and I still every once in a while find myself when things get a little hairy between, all the family and work and all that, saying, oh, I just got to make it to Friday. And this used to be how it was all the time. I just got to make it to this, or I've got this event coming up. So we're going to do this event or I've got a speaking engagement and I just got to make it past that. I was literally planning my life and my survival based on the things on the calendar. And if I could, make it to that thing and through that thing. And instead of saying, oh, what can I do today that's going to bring joy? Or what can I do today that I can notice? It was always looking ahead. I find myself kind of falling into that. And I did that actually recently. I had a lot of things going on and I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I just got to make it to it. And I'm like, no, you're not going to tell yourself that, because God forbid you don't make it to that. What did you have to show in the 3 days prior? And just kind of say, no, I'm going to lay out in the hammock out there by the garden, or I'm going to schedule a Airbnb and just take some time and go explore some new place, I take my vacation. And if you read the vacation chapter, there's a lot in the vacation chapter that kind of comes from my childhood, because, the book is filled with a lot of Lucille and the things that she taught me, but it also was a personal journey for me. Divorced parents and third generation workaholic, and I got Lyme disease in the middle of it. Lucille was a fabulous nurse. She got to kind of feel needed too when I was sick. And it was incredible. It was a very reciprocal relationship. We just kind of took care of each other. And people were like, oh, she was like a mother to you, but she wasn't a mother to me. She was a best friend. And, true friendship really doesn't know an age.
Mm-hmm.
It was like our souls were friends.
And I understand that. Yeah. And what a gift that just fell into your lap,
Oh, yeah.
For both of you, really.
Yeah, I think that I firmly believe God put Lucille in my life. And I remember the day when I was like, oh, I think we should do a book on aging. Let's call it Age to Perfection. Like, I just remember, like, randomly that came in my head. I've been thinking, let's do this book. And then it had that thought never entered my mind. That Lucille and I never would have met. So, you kind of wonder, how did these things happen? And, where do we get these promptings from? And I don't know where your listeners are on their journey, or, what their beliefs are. But for me, God got all the credit. That was a home run, because he knew what I needed and when I needed it.
Yeah. And how did that impact your family? What were the ripple effects to your family for your relationship with her? Because I know you have a very busy business with your husband. He's a doctor. And so you have a lot on your plate. How did that impact all of that?
Well, my kids, they all loved Lucille. We've got 10 kids, 5 grandkids now. But the kids that had spent time with her, they just loved her. Just absolutely loved her. She was just kind of part of the family. But they also loved what happened with Mom. I think they loved her for her, but I think they also loved her because of how she changed my life. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned the third generation workaholic. She cut the chains. She was the one thing that got in there and said, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. And so I know it's in their DNA, but we have open and honest conversations about working too much, about, spending enough time with your spouse, about spending enough time with your kids, about not allowing your health to suffer because of some deadline that maybe is artificial. Because I did realize that a lot of times the deadlines or the things that I had put on myself, that to-do list was, it was all self-inflicted. It was like, and I find myself sometimes doing that. I'll be like, I'm working on a book right now. It's actually written, and it's in copy editing. And I remember saying, well, my deadline is, I have to have done this date. And something happened and I couldn't get it done. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss my deadline. Then I realized, that was my deadline. That was the deadline I had put on myself. I can change my mind. I can push that out 3-4 weeks. It's not, no one's going to die if I don't hit this deadline and I push it out a little bit. So, being cognizant of the things we do to ourselves. And I think my kids have got a better chance now of recognizing that because their mom recognizes that.
And that was a direct correlation to a relationship with a centenarian?
Yeah, completely. I didn't have that perspective. And it wasn't something I was going to glean from my parents, because my parents were workaholics and they didn't get it from their parents because their parents were workaholics. So having someone from the outside come in, shake it up a little bit, and priceless.
Now, what if you had to pick 3 things that were kind of key things that you took away from or that you learned from Lucille that have really impacted your life? I know there's more, but what 3 things would you love to share with people that were directly related to this powerful best friendship that you had with this woman named Lucille?
Yeah, well, I won't do any spoilers. The number one thing is actually, the very end of the book, but it has an incredible lead up to why it was so important. But there are so many, but I could pick 3 that I think your listeners can relate to. And perspective is definitely number one. You just have proper perspective in life, and with everything, because when you have things in perspective, you don't get easily offended. And, my gosh, we're all so offended these days. And we're raising a bunch of children that are very easily offended. And it's a hard way to live when you're easily offended. And it tears into the very thread and fabric of your heart. So I think, putting things into perspective, hands down, was so important. And she was able to do that because she had such a vast perspective. Another one is understanding that we all have a certain amount of mental bandwidth. And when we reach that mental or physical bandwidth, we have to relax. We have to say, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a vacation. It's okay to take a nap. It's okay to take 5 minutes and shut your computer off and just sit there and do nothing, which was so foreign to me. Doing nothing seemed like a complete and utter waste of time. Why would anybody do nothing? So I think that was another one. And then for a third one, I would say love the people around you. And it doesn't just mean your spouse and your kids. I mean, that's a given. But the waitress, love the person who's sitting by themselves at church and go sit by them. Just find someone that you can love today. And you'll be surprised at how you reaching out and loving somebody else actually changes your heart. It softens your heart. You get so much more back than you will ever give.
Such incredible insights. The book is absolutely lovely. I love it. It's a best friend. Your book is like a best friend.
Thank you.
It's something that makes you smile. It's something you look forward to seeing. And I want to thank you so much for taking time to write this book, to take on this task, that it turned into something so lovely that you put out into the world. That's an encouragement. It's inspirational. And I just found such great joy. And I'm so grateful that we had this time together to hear about this wonderful person and that perspective that you brought to this conversation. I'm hoping that my tribe will really get a copy of your book. And like you said, find someone in their life that they can love on every single day. I mean, it's just such an inspiration. I want to thank you so much, Judy, for bringing such joy and light into the world by writing this book. You could have been selfish and kept Lucille to yourself, but instead you wrote a book that can reach as many people's hands and hearts that it can get to. And I'm so grateful for that.
Well, I appreciate the time. Your words are so meaningful to me. I mean, it was a labor of love. And I'm so glad that, I was granted the ability to sit and to write. Writing a book, especially one that's a little thick, is it's daunting at times. And especially when you're soul searching, because like I said, I shared a lot of stuff about myself in this book. And, I was strengthened enough to get through it. And, I knew in my heart it was the right thing to do. So, your words are so encouraging to me that you were touched by the book. And every time I get an email or a letter or whatever, it just made it all so worth it.
Well, it is definitely a gem and a gift. And how can people find your book and you, Judy?
Yeah. So Love, Life, and Lucille's anywhere, you get a book, you can go to Amazon, you go to Barnes and Noble, any of that. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to Judy Gaman. So it's JUDYGAMAN, judygaman.com. And I speak all over the country. So there's information there if you maybe have a group. If you have any book club listeners, I've been known to pop in on Zoom and book clubs, and we have such a good time, lively conversations. Sometimes I show them a few things they read about in the book, because this all happened. So I've got all the what do you call artifacts or whatever they are. I've got the things that I talk about in the book. So it's fun to pop in on these book clubs and hear what part of the book touched them, and then just kind of share some behind the scenes stuff.
Now, just a quick question before you go. Is there any of this evidence like on YouTube if somebody puts in Lucille-Fleming?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So put it in quotes, because then you won't get all the Lucille Ball stuff.
Oh.
So if you go to videos and you put in Lucille-Fleming, and Fleming is with one M, yeah, the videos like at the broadcast, oh my gosh, they're hysterical. There's a lot of videos. You can see her throwing out the first pitch and the interview Fox did with her. And for that, there's a lot of stuff that's out there. I've had people that read the book and then they're like, oh my gosh, I found a video and she's exactly how I pictured her. And so it's kind of fun to hear that, their mental picture matched up with the reality of what they thought she'd be like. But yeah, look up the videos. I mean, there's a lovelifelucille.com site where there's a lot of photos and things of us together. So yeah, there's so much out there. But remember Lucille and then Fleming with one M.
Excellent. Well, Judy, thank you so much for taking time and being on the show today. You were such a joy to spend time with, and I appreciate you again sharing.
Well, the pleasure was all mine, Gina. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Today, I've been speaking with Judy Gaman, CEO of Executive Medicine of Texas and the author of Love, Life, and Lucille. If you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 276, I will have links to Judy and her book there. And while you're there, if you'll scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can join my email subscriber list. I send out periodic encouraging emails. Friends, this is one of those conversations that I just wanted to shine a light on this wonderful book, this wonderful story. There's so much joy in the pages of this book. And I think about our lives and how there can be so much joy in the pages of our own book if we just make and take the time for that to happen. And Lucille was a great example of a woman who lived through the most incredibly earth-shattering kinds of history. And she experienced love and loss and all of these things. And she still lived life with an energy and a vigor that was inspiring. I highly encourage you to get a copy of this book, Love, Life, and Lucille. A book club on this would be amazing. She's a fantastic inspiration. And this book is a joy to read. It makes you smile every time you read it. Friends, build a life that makes you smile every day. Yes, life gets difficult. Yes, life gets overwhelming. But we have a choice on a day-to-day basis to experience life on a level that can bring joy and perspective. And so I encourage you, get a copy of this book. Read it, share it, find the joy in your life today. Find someone to shine your light on today. Know that you matter. You're here. This life you've been given is a gift. And I'm so grateful that you took some of your time to listen to this podcast. Consider yourself virtually hugged. I'm so grateful for you. I hope that you have a wonderful day today and that this podcast has given you something to think about and to make you smile. And if you love this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe and rate it, share it with your friends, and I look forward to sharing more conversations with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.